Right. I'm going to do a quick intro and then we'll get going. Hi, everybody. My name is Kate Titus. I'm the owner and founder of A Loyal Companion. And this is my partner in crime here, Dr. Sally Rademacher. We are going to talk to you tonight about canine cognitive dysfunction. It's near and dear to my heart because of a certain boxer that I live with and love and has really helped me through this process. You're gonna come and say hi. This is my girl Helen. We're gonna walk you through this process. What is it? Management, what you can do about it, some of the medications you can look at, lots of different options. But first, quick introduction. Dr. Sally Rademacher is a retired veterinarian here in Tucson. You've got 30 years.
Oh gosh, no.
No, 27,
40,
49. Okay, sorry, way underestimated that. Most recently retired from Sunrise Pet Clinic, which I happen to adore. I've worked with Dr. Rademacher for quite some time, and we really enjoy getting to put our heads together on particular topics. And this one, for different reasons, are important to both of us. So we're glad you're here, and we are looking forward to sharing with you. So we're going to kind of share some of the duties here today. Dr. Rademacher is going to take us through a lot of the science from the veterinarian standpoint and perspective. I'm going to share some stories about management, some stories about how I work with Helen now, who is 15 and a half, and she has been showing signs of CCD, which is what we're going to call Canine Cognitive Dysfunction now. She's been showing signs of CCD for about 2.5 years now. So she is not the dog that I had 2.5 years ago. She was afraid. There was a point where we lost her in the house, which we did not have a big house, by the way, and we couldn't find her because she had gone and hid somewhere that she had never gone before. She was showing classic signs of sundowning, which we'll talk a little bit about. But she was afraid, nervous, anxious. Once the sun hit a certain spot on that horizon, she turned into a different dog. And I am so happy to say that she has moved past that, and we're really, really happy with how she's been able to manage this disease. So are you ready?
As ready as I'm ever going to be.
Okay. That makes us feel really good. Okay, so let's talk about what is it? What is CCD? Where does it go? What is it?
So basically what we're thinking about with canine cognitive disease is very much like it is in people, where the circuitry doesn't work properly because there's degeneration in the brain, whether it's mild cognitive impairment, which is mild, or an actual dementia, where there's a very toxic process going on. And the things that we see are really the things that dogs generally communicate to us in their normal states as well, which is, how do I feel? What am I thinking about? How do I behave? And since they can't talk, we're kind of stuck with looking to see, is this something that's an isolated incident, or, like, unfortunately, Alzheimer's and all the dementias in people are a progressive process. So making the diagnosis is not easy. So we'll go through some hopefully fun things if you like even just a little bit of science. So don't freak out. We're not going to do slides like this the whole time, but we're going to talk about the simple science of how the brain works and what's happening in the brain. I love this image. It's beautiful. This is the image of a brain neuron. And basically, it's an elegant and complex system that goes on in the brain. And it's this brain neuron. There's several types of brain neurons in the brain, but they all have a job. There's other types of cells in the brain, but basically it's about sensory input going here in here, and motor activity input coming out the other end. So in our brains, we have 86 billion brain neurons. I do not have 86 billion neurons. Maybe I did it one time, but I don't. Hopefully I have enough neurons to get through this and make it make sense to you. So that's basically what we are. Dogs have 2.2 billion neurons. So we have 40 times more neurons than dogs do. So think about that when you are interacting with your dog and wondering why they don't get it. Usually it's because we're too complicated compared to how their brains work in a much more stepwise fashion.
Right. And complicated is not always better.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Ready? Yep.
Okay.
So this basically is, this image is a really good image. On the left side is a healthy brain. On the right side is a messed up brain. So you can see on the right, it's smaller. There's fewer folds. Those openings where the arrows are going, those are the ventricles where cerebrospinal fluid flows through the brain and does all the things that it does. So when the brain shrinks, those get bigger, which adds pressure to the brain. So now you've got nerve cells that are dying, you have more pressure, and this could be a brain that is just got mild cognitive impairment and brain shrinkage, although both sides would look like that, not one looking one way, the other looking the other. So what happens is that sensory input that goes into the brain doesn't get processed properly. And so what we see seems to be brain disease because the senses like smell and vision and their facial movements that are really vital to us understanding what's going on with them, expressions, hearing, all those things are diminished, where things like the ears and the nose and the eyes and the touch, but they may still be working. They're just not being processed properly. So the 6 main brain changes, and Kate made these slides and they're amazing. I mean, they really are, because this first sentence, this helps you to be patient. If you can kind of work through your head of what's going on here, and makes you realize that, you know, a lot of times we think our dogs are doing something kind of on purpose, which personally, I don't think they ever do that other than to get your attention. But this is something where it's not your fault, it's not their fault. And it's a toxic process. So there's less energy as those brain cells are not functioning. There's inflammation. There's dead cells in there there's waste products from that. That's just how life is. Slower signals because there are fewer neurotransmitters that are working properly, fewer brain cells that are working properly. They're not getting enough oxygen, and there's cell damage overall. So it's like this little slow death process of the brain. So here is this sciencey part that I'll try to make simple, but the cranial nerves, the definition is there's 12 of them, and they originate in the brain and they exit out the skull somewhere and go somewhere to do their job. So there's 12 of them in dogs and in people. There's 2 of them that actually, I mean, if I had a nose like a dog, the way these nerves work is from here to about here with the functions and the senses. And then there's a couple of nerves that actually do more in the body, but for the most part, they do things having to do with the head. And we're going to go over 5 of them because those are the most important in what you see every day and what you'll notice changes in if your dog is having brain disease of any kind, but certainly a degenerative disease. So bear with me. Okay.
It really is fun though. Once you start to see this, and as I read through the slides and the information that came from Dr. Rademacher and my reading, it was like, oh, now I get it. Now I understand why she does X, Y, Z, and why she's amazing in how she's able to function, because I can see the impairment in every one of these.
So when we think about the five senses, smell, taste, hearing, touch, vision. Taste, I stay away from, because unless you have a finicky dog, no dog ever tastes anything. It goes in their mouth and they swallow it immediately. So we don't go there with the taste thing. But we're going to start with the first cranial nerve. Look at that cute, his name is Reacher. Look at his beautiful nose. Look how long it is. You just want to kiss it. Boop, just want to kiss it.
Very beautiful.
That's right. So their sense of smell is thousands of times more sensitive than ours. It depends on the breed, but even a pug has a better nose than you do in terms of smell. And the reason is, if you look at this cross section, look at how much area there is in that nose, and that is filled with scrolls of folded tissues that actually look a little bit like that brain. And that increases the surface area to capture the scents that are coming into their nose, SCENT scents. And if you cross-section it this way, it looks a little bit like the brain. So basically, I will look at my notes every once in a while because of that 86 billion neuron thing.
It's down to 85.
That's right.
That's what 49 years in vet medicine will do to you.
That's right. But, the sense of smell for them is amazing. They can smell if you are thinking about going to the kitchen. You don't even have to go there. They can tell. So this is what I call a superpower nerve. It's superpower number 1. So next, we talk about the cranial nerve 2, the optic nerve. That's for vision. And there's a lot of debate about how well dogs see, how they see, how does it compare to us, because we're humans, we make everything in comparison to us for some reason. But it's basically very similar to humans. Some features are better, some features are not as good as our vision, and some are just different. But if you look at this beautiful dog's eye, you see the cornea, which is kind of reflecting. Then there's fluid, and then there's the lens, and then there's fluid, and then there's the retina, and then it gets to the nerve. So think about all the things that can happen to that eye without you even seeing something in that eye that are going to goof up the vision. So it's an incredibly important nerve. Once the images, which is basically just light going into the eye, get into the brain, it's a very complicated process of making the images that are seen. It's an important nerve, but I don't call it a superpower nerve for the things that we're talking about.
And I think when you think about the demographics of the dogs that we're talking about having CCD or showing signs of CCD, they're primarily senior dogs. So there may already be vision impairment, and that can contribute to additional confusion and trouble processing what they're taking in. And honestly, sight, I consider sight to be, for us, it's our number 1 thing we rely on. For them, I think it's down around number 3, because we're going to get smell is number 1, hearing probably is number 2, and then number 3 is going to be vision.
Well, and I can tell you the story of somebody who is a dog trainer whose dog does agility. And it wasn't until she had to go move somewhere else briefly that she realized that her dog was blind. So dogs, I can't say it enough, are amazing.
Yeah.
So they should always tear a page out of their book. So next. So the maxillary nerve, cranial nerve number 5, this is the nerve that allows us and dogs to feel what's happening on their face and their head, basically. And it's also the nerve that allows them to chew food. So it's a sensory nerve like input, but it's also a motor nerve, which is what they're called when it actually does something. So this is the nerve that allows the dog to blink when something gets in their eye, to turn their head away when something gets on their face, or They can feel something coming towards them or spit something out if it's hurting their mouth, and then makes them make a hot spot, right? So, and if the nerve is truly not working, they can't close their jaw. So they have a dropped jaw. Very bad thing. Not very common, unfortunately.
And the other thing I will say, as far as real life application on this particular one, is over the last 2.5 years, we've watched Helen, her ability to eat has changed. So she will, we've had to switch over and feed her soft food. And as we feed the soft food, she has trouble figuring out how to get that food out of the bowl and into her mouth. So for example, I've been spoon feeding her for about 1.5 years now, because she can eat the top, whatever will come off as she licks. She understands how to lick, but she does not understand how to reach in and grab it, a mouthful, and come out and chew. So I really depend on having the right type of bowl. We actually feed her out of a bowl that looks like a half a football. So it's made for flat-faced dogs. It's actually a bowl for like Frenchies, bulldogs who need a flatter surface. Hello. But we also see, like, if I give her something, she's not always sure how to open her mouth to get that piece of food in there. Or she moves it around. You'll see her kind of turn her head rather than just move her tongue and move the food. She'll tilt her head to try to get things back.
How old was she when you started to notice?
About 13.
2 years?
2.5 years, yeah.
Which pertains to a different slide, but according to all the reading I've done, which I had to do a lot of to do this isn't something that I necessarily knew well enough to tell you about, but apparently cognitive disease presentation at what age does it present is not sooner in large breed dogs than it would be in a small breed dog. It's not the same as like, I'm going to get cancer when I'm 4 if I'm a Great Dane versus I'm going to get cancer when I'm 12 if I'm a Chihuahua. I don't think anybody knows for sure why, but there may be some protective things about large breed dogs, some genetic things, or I'm not going to get into that because I don't really know. And all the neuroscientists that will be watching this on YouTube are going to make fun of me. So they're going to discredit me. Okay. So,
All right.
yeah.
Okay.
Now, this nerve is a superpower nerve. This is the facial nerve. This is the nerve that makes the muscles of facial expression work. So if you look at this picture, this pug's eyes are kind of wide, although pug's eyes are always kind of wide. The ears are kind of back in a soft position. The mouth is open, kind of a smile with their folds. They're always kind of smiling. And head tilt, although that's actually these muscles, but it's still part of their, how do I get my owner's attention? And one of the really cool things about this, that I love these little sidebars, is that their ability to do this,
To raise their eyebrows.
raise their eyebrows, which aren't really eyebrows, but you can call them that, is something that evolutionarily has happened in our companion dogs. Wolves can't do that. So somewhere along the line, a dog got this mutation that said, this muscle right here is going to be really good because I'm going to look like a little baby and they're going to take really good care of me. And so this to me is superpower number 3, only because I think there's one more that's more important than that. But this is like one of the biggest things in what you look at every day to see what's going on with your dog.
And I think in Helen, we really saw that. There's a certain flat affect. If you have ever known a human who has a cognitive dysfunction, dementia, Alzheimer's, there's a flatness about the way that they interact with you. You're not getting the facial communication that you're looking for. We started to notice that in Helen about 2 years ago. I can look back at photos and see that her eyes are rounder, They're not the almond shape that they are when she's very comfortable and then expressing what she wants, but she has a very flat affect. And I can tell when she's really struggling because I could see that. I could see that in her face.
That happens in people too. And it is sometimes one of the earliest symptoms. So not that I'm a specialist on that either. So here is the cranial nerve 8, big long name, vestibulocochlear, means balance and hearing. So auditory. This dog, whose ears are almost as big as that rawhide, and look at the size of the dog and the size of the ears. It's like, I need to hear what's coming so that I can turn around and try to kill it, right?
Or bark at it.
At least bark at it,
Yeah.
get it to go away. But I mean, when you look and you compare to this model, this is all about picking up sound and directing it, which is part of their superpower of what they can hear. It's not the only part, and I probably couldn't explain to you the whole part. But if you look down here, it's also really protecting that eardrum, which is that blue disc right there. And yeah, and I'll stand up and try not to fall down. But your ear opening is around about here in relation to where the eardrum is for you. So look how far that eardrum is from the opening, which keeps it from getting damaged unless you poke something down in there.
Q-tip.
Or a foxtail gets down in there. So at any rate, this to me is superpower number 2. Like Kate said, smelling, hearing, and then being able to express their feelings to you with their face. And of course, there's the whole body part of that, but that's not any of the cranial nerves. So cognitive disease in humans versus dogs. When I made this slide at the beginning, I was going to show the differences. Well, there aren't very many, at least as far as we know. How much do we really know about cognitive disease in dogs versus in people? Not that much. And when we talk about impairment, and they use that term in people, MCI, mild cognitive impairment, that's usually based on maybe a CT and some cognitive testing. Something a little bit more than those. I'm going to tell you 4 words and I want you to remember them and then they talk about other stuff and all you do is think about those 4 words that you can repeat back. So it's an aging process and maybe more than aging, but the cells die and the brain shrinks and there's a decrease in neurotransmitters. It's, the same kind of thing that would become a bigger deal. Same in dogs, as far as we know. But dementia, and we put Alzheimer's here, but dementia in general is a toxic process. And it has to do with amyloid and tau proteins. You've probably heard about them. You may not know what they are. Amyloid plaques, tau tangles. These are toxic things. They're normal things. They should be in your body, but they shouldn't be doing this. They are like in your blood vessels. So if you go on a treatment to try and target amyloid, your blood vessels might not like that very well in the brain. Neurotransmitter dysfunction, they don't work as well. And there's fewer of them. There's fewer cells to actually transmit. Inflammation from the deposits, disruption of the function of the glial cells or the astrocytes that are in there to help protect the brain and do some other things. And in people, amyloid and tau accumulation can start 10 to 15 years before a person is really showing symptoms of dementia. So in dogs, it's pretty much the same thing. I named some of the neurotransmitters: serotonin, dopamine, GABA, acetylcholine's another one. There are some others. There are a lot of, we are basically chemistry and physics all put into a body. And blood vessel damage. Dogs do have tau protein, but it doesn't seem to make those tangles. And it probably has a different amino acid composition than in humans. And that's about all I know about that. So the brain is just sort of slowly dying. So who's likely to get cognitive dysfunction? That's a really hard one to say.
It is a really hard thing to say.
Some of the things that might, certainly a sedentary lifestyle, maybe 6 to 7 times more likely. And that makes sense, right? You're not using your brain, you're not doing much. So your brain is like, I don't learn anything, I don't do anything. And some of those pathways that would normally be used to do stuff are dormant or just don't function very well. Dogs with decreased hearing or vision for a number of reasons, but partly just like us, they're not interacting with us the way they normally would. And so things shut off. In people, audiologists, neuroaudiologists are very concerned when people are losing a certain level of hearing and they aren't doing anything about it, that they're very concerned for the possibility of dementia. And part of that is that those pathways, which is basically what this all is in the brain, get kind of co-opted to do something else, or they just kind of shut off, and you don't get them back. If you think about people who have some sort of nerve damage, it takes a very long time for a nerve to regenerate. And so that's why it's kind of an irreversible process usually. Epilepsy, primarily because of what that does to the brain and some of the medications. And then things like diabetes, dental disease, things that cause diabetes makes glucose unavailable and brain needs glucose. Dental disease, yuck, inflammatory, gross, toxic. Chronic inflammation of any kind, kidney and liver, they're the filters to get the yuck out of your body. And if those don't get out of your body, the brain is very likely to suffer.
Okay,
That's your turn.
it is my turn.
Yay. Do you want to sit here?
No, I think I'm okay. Take care of your knee.
Thank you.
Okay, so recognizing the signs. This can be challenging, and we'll talk a little bit about diagnosing in a bit, but this is a challenging one for veterinarians to diagnose, primarily because there is so much behavioral elements to it that could be something else. So one of the easiest ways or the most efficient ways to figure out if this is CCD is something called the DISHA framework. So we're looking at 6 elements: disorientation, interactions, the sleep-wake cycle, house training, activity, and anxiety. So each of you today, well, actually tomorrow, in your thank you email, you will get an ebook about what we talked about today, and there will be a copy of this framework and how to take it, how to score it. So Helen is she is moderate. We did it with her. She is like 30 something. That was how many she scored. You'll see what the score looks like. But let's talk about each one of these and see what we're talking about. When I was talking about the flat affect, that's a pretty good image of it. It's kind of there's a confusion there. There's I'm not really sure what's happening, but I'm here kind of look. It's very flat. That wasn't just like a snapshot and I caught her at a bad time. I looked at that entire series of pictures and they all looked the same. I mean, she looks really cute in her little bandana, but okay, disorientation, that's the D. So we're looking at getting stuck in corners or behind furniture, going to the wrong side of the door. So maybe they go to the hinge side of the door where they've never had a problem with that. They may not get out of the way as you try to open the door because they're not quite sure why it's not opening where it should. Some dogs will stare at the wall or stare into space for no reason that you can figure out. They'll get lost in their own house. Helen will try to find me wherever I am. Like if I leave the room and she loses track of me, she will look all around the house to try to find me, even if I'm in the same room with her. So she will get lost. She may not seem to recognize folks. She's been pretty good with that. But that's another one that you're going to look for in your own dog. So let's talk about interaction. They're often less interested in interacting with you, being touched, maybe a little grumpier or irritable. And as you listen to these, think about the fact that these could be tied to something else. And we'll talk about that a little later, but I want you to kind of have an ear for that. They don't greet you the way they used to. Maybe they don't come to the door when you get home. Maybe they come to the door, but they're like, it's you, where they used to just, get really excited. They might be a little snappy, a little grumpy. You may feel like you touched them in the wrong place and they're going to whip their head around at you. You scared them, basically, and they're not quite sure what's going on. Or they just seem kind of checked out and not with you, right? They're not really interacting in the way that they had been. So let's talk about the sleep-wake cycle. That's Kalula. She did really fall asleep on that plate after looking it up. Waking up, pacing in the middle of the night. This is one that really gets pet parents because one, it's hard to watch, it's hard to see, but it also breaks your sleep-wake cycle. So you're not as functional as you would be to be able to deal with that. You could have crying and barking at night, which is also usually related to confusion. Not quite sure what's happening. It's dark out. Imagine if they have a little bit of vision impairment, that's going to be even worse. Those dogs then tend to sleep all day. So now they've flipped their sleep-wake cycle and they're up wandering around all night instead of sleeping during the evening. And they just can't seem to settle. So you'll notice that the whole time that we've been talking until right now, Helen has been wandering. That's very common. For her, there's another element to that. She also has some pretty serious osteoarthritis in her hips, but she can't find someplace to lie down. She just kind of wanders until all of a sudden she's like, oh, I'm starting to go down, so I'll just sit and Dr. Rad can pet me. So they just can't seem to settle. So as we go to the first A, did I miss an H? Activity-wise, they stop being interested in things they were interested in before. Sometimes that is toys, sometimes it's activities, sometimes it's you. That goes back to the interactive piece. They pace back and forth, just kind of wandering. Where are they going? What's happening? They do the same thing over and over again, which Helen has been doing, just kind of walking back and forth. You'll have some dogs that will circle. That's a common one. They just seem really, really out of it and not really wanting to engage in some of the activities around.
Okay.
Yes.
So she started really digging in the bed.
Yep.
Digging, circle, dig, then gets out and walks around, does
It
it
starts it again. Yeah. It's almost a compulsive cycle, is really the easiest way to explain that. But yeah, that's absolutely a signal.
I think the H.
Was house training.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go back to that because I missed the H. House training. So it's not unusual for them to break house training. Like Helen surprised the heck out of us when even here, she came up and looked at me and I was like, oh, what do you need, babe? Not demonstrative about what she needed. And the next thing I know, she disappeared and then she came trotting back into my office. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. Mm-hmm. So she has found a spot that if we don't pay attention to her, she'll go and pee right by the door. Earlier today, I was doing an interview with a local TV station, and I'm standing and I'm talking to the person, and all of a sudden the other person in the room says, "Oh, be careful." She had just stopped and pooped right in front of me. So that is not. She was always very fastidious. So that's a very common piece. There's a difficulty in communicating what they need. Add to that, again, the same demographic, our seniors. They don't always get as much notice as they used to about the fact that they have to go to the bathroom. So sometimes it's like, oh, gotta go, out it comes. But with our CCD dogs, in the same way, it's just kind of like, oh, well, I guess I have to go, and then out it comes. Okay. All right, anxiety. They cannot stand to be alone, become very needy. Helen's always been kind of a Velcro dog for me, especially in the last 10 years since she got to start coming here. But she does not like, especially if I'm anywhere in the house, she wants to be where I am. Andy is here with us tonight because he is her emotional support dog. So wherever she is, I make sure I have Andy because she feels very comfortable having him close. Sounds, normal sounds, or what normally would not have bothered her, become a problem. And I think this also has to do with one of the cranial nerves when we're talking about auditory response. I did a very interesting tour many years ago. This is probably 12 years ago. A local senior living facility ran a program for family members of folks that had dementia or Alzheimer's. And they basically recreated what it was like to have those diseases for the family members. So we, those desk pads, that you put under your chair that you roll so you don't ruin the carpet. Okay, so they have those big pointy things on the underside. So you put those in your shoes. That was to mimic neuropathy. They gave you a pair of glasses that just had a pinhole in it. So that's kind of a macular degeneration kind of thing. They had you wear headphones. And in the headphones, it wasn't a constant song. You would hear, it would be, in this case, it was 1950s music playing, and then all of a sudden, in blaring comes the telephone, or someone yelling, or the radio gets turned up really loud. You just can't think. And then put mittens on your hand and ask you to do tasks like fold socks or write a letter. But that was 12 years ago, and I have a horrible memory. And I remembered that very specifically because it was experiential, right? So I got to do it. I got to experience what it was like to be in that situation. And I go back to that experience when I'm thinking about Helen and what she's going through in these moments, that if we drop a water bottle or a broom falls over, if it's the right pitch, she's going to jump out of her skin because she's not sure what it is. She's not going to recover very easily, but she's also hearing impaired and she's vision impaired. So again, going back to that demographic, those are going to be there as well. Okay, so some of the other important signs that we're looking at: wobbliness. If you've been watching Helen wander around in here, she's not as sure-footed as she once was. She was my fitness demo dog, so you can imagine what she was like 10 years ago. Then the sensory loss that we talked about, the vision, the hearing, those make all of those things worse. But the thing about the wobbliness and the wandering, the falling, the tremors, things like that, those could also be related to other disease processes like osteoarthritis, any degenerative joint disease, vestibular disease, which has been called old dog disease. That's a balance thing, head tilts. It looks like your dog's having a stroke. It's the most horrible thing to experience. But there are other processes this could be, which is why I think that that format or that framework is really important. If you think your dog is having some dementia issues, it's important to fill that out. Take it to your veterinarian and have some questions. And I have a list of questions for you to think about. So this number stunned me. 80% of dogs over the age of 8 have osteoarthritis somewhere in their body. That is huge. So imagine the stumbling, bumbling that goes along with that. And then you get a day where they have a flat affect. What is it? Is it CCD? Is it OA? Well, guess what? It can be both. So dogs are not black and white. It could be combinations of many things. But if you can figure out what things are involved, you can treat them. You and your veterinarian can get to the bottom of how to treat this. So I'm going to walk through a little bit through the diagnosis, but I'd like you to hop in a little bit. So getting to the diagnosis really is teamwork. Your veterinarian in this particular disease, and in many of them, they're going to depend on you and your observations and what you can tell them. Okay. So when you go to or you schedule your appointment to your veterinarian, once you get there, they're going to do a couple of things. They're going to do a complete history. So that means they're going to ask you what's been going on. So all of those things you've been noticing. They're going to ask you about, let's see, vomiting, diarrhea, what else? Food, appetite and eating
Movement.
changes, movement questions. They're going to ask you the same questions they ask you every time.
And they're going to ask you like 3 times.
Yes.
And that there's a reason for that. One is a lot of times whatever the technician asked you was maybe different than what I want to ask after she told me what you said. 2 is when I get in there and I start talking to you, you're like, oh, I forgot to tell you that. And so, which is fine. I mean, we all do that. If you go to your own doctor, take someone with you, for God's sakes. And that you do bring that up. It's very hard to remember everything. And sometimes it's hard to be honest because you feel guilty that there's something wrong with your dog. And so if you think there's anything that you might have done, you may not want to say it, which is human. I mean, it's because you love your dog. So the history thing to me is like, don't get too stressed out when you get asked the same thing 2 or 3 times, or you get asked additional questions. And don't say to the technician, I'm going to wait for the doctor. Right. Because this is your trial, this is your practice run of the history, right? You can tell her what you want to tell them, and then you can tell me the rest.
Right. And you can tell them what you want to tell them. Then you get to have a conversation about it when your veterinarian gets in the room. And I will tell you that one technique that I use is when someone comes in to see me for a mobility consult, we always get records. I won't see anyone without records. I'll have read through the records, but I'm going to have you tell me the story because there is so much more that is not in the record. I get the basics, but I want to hear your perspective of it, where you're having challenges. So when we talk about those assessment tools, that's the one I just went through, the format I went through. And then your veterinarian may want to do blood work. They want to check for any abnormality. So if we have something like potential for your dog to be diabetic, and that's contributing to anything. I mean, there are a lot of liver and kidney. I know it's true in humans, and I think it's true in animals, that UTIs can trigger some confusion and can trigger CCD type actions.
If you are a person that goes into the doctor and says, I just don't feel quite right and I feel kind of fuzzy, we're going to get a urine sample from you. And you're like, okay.
It's like, why?
This is like a repetitive thing, but that's why. And especially in a dog, where, especially if they're already incontinent or something like that, you got to look at whatever you can do to assess. And urine tells you different things about like the kidneys than blood work does.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's a method to the madness.
Videos. Does that help you?
it does.
She gets them for me. She used to get them for me all the time.
I mean, even people bring them in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, it's so much easier to be able to see what the dog is actually doing than try to play charades with the owner as they try to tell you what it looked like. And they start demonstrating. It's like, you can't really see that. But if you would just show me a video, that would be fantastic. But yeah, that's a great point. Let's also talk a little bit about pain, because I know that pain has some similar, it manifests itself in some similar ways. So pain is going to make the confusion worse. So one of the ways that we picked up on Helen's was that she wasn't moving the way I thought she should move. She was starting to hesitate to get in the car. She was starting to not do some things that were very normal for her to do. And it wasn't until my veterinarian and I, Dr. Forer and I, said, oh, let's just take a look at those hips just in case. And we did some radiographs and x-rays, and wow, we found serious hip dysplasia in her. And once we got the pain meds on board, she was doing much better. In fact, she had a flare. She had a period of about 3 weeks where she was just flat. She was not wanting to participate in anything. She was really out of it, just kind of walking around like she was drunk, frankly. And she started to trip more. She was showing some signs of some old dog nerve problems in her upper back and her neck. And we decided to change the anti-inflammatory medication she was on. And we actually went to prednisone, which I was very, very hesitant to do. As y'all like to call it, it's the drug we all hate to love.
It's a silver bullet, though.
Yeah, it is the silver bullet, because you know what? She is much better now. And we have titrated it down. We have found the amount that is going to work for her. And really, when we think about long-term effects of prednisone, what's long-term for her? You know, are we talking about a year? I hope so. We're talking about more than that, maybe. But you know what? I'm fine with that. As long as we stay healthy, continue to do the blood work, make sure that we're not getting super bad side effects from that. I'm happy to see her be happier, be willing to walk, want to get up and out of her bed a lot more. And pain really does make confusion a whole lot worse. How many of you have had chronic pain? Or at least had, you had a back pain. You had something that just followed you around like you're like a shadow. You just can't get away from it. It takes so much cognitive energy to process that pain that there's just not enough for anything else. And that's where you really start to see it with these CCD dogs. These are just some of the pain signals that you might see, the limping and the stiffness, which is why we went ahead and did the x-rays for her. The reluctance to move, they don't want to get up. Restless at night, this can be related to not being able to get comfortable. It may not even be cognitive. It may be, I can't sleep in my bed, my hips hurt too bad, my back hurts too bad, whatever it is. Difficulty getting up, whether it's off the floor, if you have tile or wood on your floors or slippery floors, not being able to do that. They're irritable. They avoid steps, don't want to get in the car, don't want to jump on the couch, definitely can't get in bed. Those are some of the most common pain signals. Okay, so how do you prepare for your vet visit? We talked about a couple of these, but here's what to bring. So you want to bring that assessment with you. If you think this could be a cognitive issue, do the assessment. Videos of behavior, list of questions that you have. And this is a big one. This is a big one. It's so hard to think of those questions in the moment. And how many times have you gone in, you've had your appointment, you walk out to your car and you're like, oh, I forgot. Right? So write them down and bring them with you. Oops, there's a typo. Have someone help
to
them.
relinquish that piece of paper to your veterinarian, because they're like, can I have that?
Yeah.
And get this in the record.
They absolutely want it. They absolutely do. So have someone come with you or someone to listen for you. And I encourage you to do this in your own health appointments. Have someone there whose only job is to scribe or write stuff down and listen so that you can be completely involved in the conversation. What to ask? Is this CCD? What are we dealing with? Is it something else? Is it both? Ask your veterinarian to share what their thought process is. Remember, this is a partnership. Okay, you are absolutely allowed to ask those questions. This is your dog. What tests are you going to do and why? What are you looking for? What's the purpose? Bring me along on the ride. That doesn't mean that you get to have a half an hour lesson on why we want to run blood work, but having that, like you talked about, urine analysis shows different things than blood work. It shows different things on how the kidneys work. That's why we need to see it. How much is it going to cost? It's okay to ask that question. That's what estimates are for. What changes can I make to help my dog? Be open to listening for those. Are there any medications? And we're going to go over this in a second. Helen is on a medication and has been a lifesaver for all of us. Are there any meds right now that would benefit her? And what should I expect going forward? Those are all good questions and good things to be prepared for. Okay, so when you're dealing with, when you're working with CCD, you've got your diagnosis, you know that's what you have. You're really looking at 4 separate areas that can help improve your dog's quality of life, and frankly, your quality of life as well. So let's go through those really quickly. Is it fish? There we go. First one, absolutely the most important, is the environment. You've got to stop the slipping. Nothing does more to kill a dog's confidence than slipping on the floor. So there are a couple of ways you can do that. You can fix the paws or you can fix the floors. So I would say fix the paws, fix everything, frankly. But first thing, you want to make sure that you trim the hair between the dog's pads. So if you have a golden or you have an Andy who's got little fluffy stuff coming out the bottom of their paws, you need to trim that off. We need to get those pads on the surface. When they walk on all that hair, it's like walking on socks. Not good. Short nails, get those trimmed down as far as you can. When they stand, the nail, don't look at Helen's. When you stand, the nails should not touch the floor. If the quicks are too long and you can't make that happen, just keep going at it about every 10 days. Okay, if you want to fix the floors, you want to think about mats or runners. Think about creating a highway for your dog to get from one end of the house to the other. Think about the path that they already travel, and that's where they're going to be. Now, things to think about, if you have someone who is a trip hazard in your house, that may not be the way you want to go. So you want to be careful with that. If you're using mats, I would avoid the puzzle piece mats because those can turn into slippery pieces, especially for humans. We have a ton of sand here, dirt, it gets underneath and it becomes like ball bearings and then they move. So I would avoid those unless you're going to tape them down. You can look for, you can buy individual stair treads. So if you have steps or stairs that are wood or uncarpeted, those can be good. Those will work for you, but we're going to talk about stairs in just a second. Other options are boots. I love lava socks. I think they're great. They're the nice combination between a sock and a boot. They're kind of like slippers. You can look for the rubber dip nod skid socks. The ones are cute that have like a little design on them. But if those rotate, now you've got a dog in socks. So I like the ones that are rubber dipped, so they have the rubber on all sides. Toe grips are another great one. They're really, they're tubing. They are rubber tubing. They fit directly on the dog's nail, so that when the dog stands, the back side of the nail is what's going to come in contact with the ground, and that's where the rubber is going to be. So those can be really good as well. There are some paw waxes out there that work. You just have to build those up a little bit. They can be slippery at the beginning. So safety basics. I do not like uncontrolled stairways. Those are accidents waiting to happen. So baby gates at the top and the bottom, and you don't want them going up or down unassisted. Night lights seems like a silly thing, but it's a big deal. We have night lights all over our house. For Helen, sometimes we leave a light on in the living room. So if she's wandering, this is especially important if this dog also has some vision impairment. So you want to give some keys. Doorways, you want to make sure that they're not darting out because they get scared about something. So you want to be careful on that. Furniture, you want to watch out for, just like a toddler, you want to watch out for sharp edges, especially if they have some vision issues, because I guarantee they're going to walk right into them. They're going to bang into them. That's going to hurt. So you want to be careful about that. As far as the toileting goes, so bathroom breaks, routine is key. Before we got Helen on her medication, we had one shot to get her outside to go to the bathroom. She would go out the second time she went out. She was what we used to call spooky mode. She was in spooky mode, and she would go out and get scared being in the backyard and would try to dig a hole, and she was going to sleep there. She reverted to a stray dog. So I couldn't get her to come back in. We couldn't put the leash on her and bring her in. She would set her heels. So I would have to go out and pick her up and carry her in and put her in her bed and stay there with her until she got settled. So routines are huge, but they can also be magic. So eating routines, food routines, even your routine. If you're getting up at a certain time, that creates predictability, and that is essential.
One thing I want to add in this is pools.
Oh, yeah, pools
Swimming
are
pools.
awful.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you've got a pool and it doesn't have a fence around it, you know,
That's
that's
why I take Zuri out on leash.
a good idea.
They should not be out. You should think of your dog as a toddler, as a child. They should not be out unattended anywhere near the
Fall in.
pool. Yeah, and then they don't know how to get back out.
Right.
It doesn't matter how great of a swimmer they are. We're talking about confusion. Okay. Second one is mental stimulation and routine. Okay, so we need to get them having some fun. So food games, if they're still food motivated. Obedience review, asking them to do a sit and a down before maybe they get to eat their meal, or on your walk, or you do a fitness routine. Having those, create a treat trail. So that can be, you're just, think Hansel and Gretel. Okay, you're just letting them follow that. Daily walks are important. If they like that routine and they're physically able, that's a good one. Your rule for success on mental stimulation is really going to be keep that routine, that daily routine, keep it short, keep it easy, and celebrate wins. The little things matter. If they start to walk away, get frustrated, start to whine, you need to stop it right there. Don't let it get to that point. Now you can add some gentle variation. So we'll go for a walk at 7:30 every morning, but maybe we go the opposite direction in the neighborhood. Especially if she comes out, we usually let her tell us which way we're going to go. So if she goes to the right, okay, we're going to the right. If she goes to the left, we're going to the left. She also has particular parks that she really enjoys that we can go to. A little bit of variation can be good, but it needs to be a little bit at a time. Okay, nutritional support. This is the third one. You want to make sure you're feeding the brain properly. Okay, so you have 4 main nutritional goals here. You want to reduce the inflammation. You want to provide alternative energy sources. So we talked about glucose being incredibly important for the brain. You want to reduce oxidative stress. You've all heard the term antioxidants. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then how to clear the waste products. So of those 6 things, remember in the earlier when we talked those 6 things that were going on, inflammation was on that, inability to clear waste products. There's not enough oxygen getting to the brain, all of those. So you can help deal with that through the food that you feed. So reducing inflammation, you're looking at fish, wild caught is best. A collection of berries, not just blueberries all the time. There are some that you don't want to feed too much of. Like strawberries have the little tiny seeds in it. Raspberries have those tiny seeds. So you want to have a selection of those. Colorful vegetables. So that could be like carrots and something green and red, yellow, and orange bell peppers. Things like that. So eat the rainbow, basically. And egg yolks. Egg yolks are also good. Preferably cooked. Yes, preferably cooked. All right.
Anything about an egg right now, cook it.
Yeah, cook it, yeah. When you're talking about alternative sources, you're talking about different types of oil. So coconut oil, big caveat here though, is you have to start very, very small. I'm talking like 1/8 of a teaspoon small, because that one can cause diarrhea in a big hurry. And with a dog who has some CCD, you do not want to have diarrhea. Take my advice on that one. Go slow. B vitamins can also be good. Your veterinarian can talk to you about how to get those in. Some are more bioavailable than others. It may also be something where you do B12 shots in conjunction with aquapuncture, which is acupuncture, except they're putting a fluid in. So sometimes you can do that with B12 shots. So you get the benefit of both. Now, when we're talking about reducing oxidative stress, we're talking about eating antioxidant type food. So that's your berries, again, spinach, carrots, sweet potatoes. So that spinach is dark green. Kale is another one if you can get your dog to eat kale. Yeah, Half Moon will eat kale. He's the only person in the house that will eat kale. And then we got to clear the waste process. And then we're talking about golden paste. Has anybody heard of golden paste? So it's the recipe will be in the ebook, but it's basically turmeric, black powder, and some water, and a little bit of the coconut oil, I believe. But that helps clean things out. So again, be careful with how much you use.
Yeah, especially with turmeric.
Yeah,
That can be like if somebody thinks they've got giardia kind of thing.
yeah,
So
that can be bad.
Yeah.
Very small amounts. Yeah.
I don't want to get picky, but what about broccoli?
Broccoli, you can do cauliflower, any of those. You just watch out for any sort of, if your dog has a history of getting gas a lot, that's a tough one.
Breast
He
kind of
has
vegetables.
tons of brown broccoli
Yep.
and frozen stems.
Stems, those are all great. Those are
every
all
day.
great.
Well,
Those
of
are
course,
great.
any of these things, if you're not doing them now, you're not going to like do all this, right?
Right.
You're going to do one at a time, and
Yeah.
you're going to make sure it's on top of a well-balanced diet to begin with,
Yeah.
not to make this their diet.
Right. You
And
can
there
stick
are
with these
some
offers.
commercial diets that are made for specifically for brain health. I know a lot of people are like anti-Purina, anti-Hills, but these diets are made for them. So it's not wrong to try those.
And I have had some clients who have tried Purina Bright Minds, and they've had a really good impact. And lion's mane is a mushroom, so
It's a funky mushroom.
it is
Of
a
course,
funky
mushrooms are funky.
fungus. Okay, finally, let's talk about medications and pharmacological support here. Our goal here is to get the right chemical balance in the brain as much as we can. So the first one for CCD is what Helen is taking, and it's called selegiline. What's
Trade name
Anapril?
is Anapril.
Anapril,
It's been around for a very long time, but not necessarily for this.
right. And I can tell you that they say it takes, the literature says, I think 4 to 6 weeks to work. We were told 3 weeks, and it was 3 weeks to the day. That evening, we let her out to go to the bathroom, and she came back in with no problem. And I looked at Kathy, and I was like, oh, we got her dog back. And she has done really, really well since then. So that has been a great drug for us. For dogs that are having trouble sleeping, melatonin is a natural sleep aid. You do want to be careful with that, so make sure you talk to your veterinarian if you're planning on starting that so you get the proper dosing. For anxiety, there are some anti-anxiety drugs that can be really, really helpful that are pretty common. Do you want to talk about Traz and GABA?
Yeah, and I'm not going to talk about them specifically and what they do. And there are a lot of dogs that are on trazodone anyway, especially for like vet visits, and gabapentin because it's very good for nerve pain, and it doesn't have a lot of the side effects that are associated with non-steroidals or some of the more potent things. But gabapentin kind of interferes with the process of nerve function, nerve transmission. That's how it works to make the nerves calm down. So if we're trying to make the nerves work better, you have to think about how that might not, if you've got a dog on gabapentin, you started it for anxiety and things are looking worse, I mean, you probably want to not do that. Plus, some of these can have additive effects, like selegiline doesn't go well with selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, like Prozac, fluoxetine, or fomipramine is a different kind of anti-anxiety. So you might actually get the opposite effect, which can actually happen with selegiline all by itself because it enhances dopamine. It also decreases free radicals. So if the dopamine, you give it in the daytime, right?
I give it in the morning.
Yeah, you don't want to give it at night.
No.
Or you might have a dog who's walking around all night. When I was in veterinary school, when this was used for something else, one of the endocrinologists said it's like speed. For the other thing, it was a different dose and that kind of thing. But it is not used as much as you think it might be used for this. For various reasons. And I think a lot of it is just veterinarians aren't necessarily very familiar with using it.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to diss anyone, but I think that might be part of it too.
That's part of it, yeah. If you can get the anxiety under control, you can really improve the quality of life. The less they're kind of constantly looking around, trying to figure out, when's the next shoe going to drop? You know what that feels like for yourself. Think about COVID. I mean, we all kind of walked around like that. If you can get them out of that state, that's certainly much more helpful for them. And then the other side is we need to pay attention to the pain relief. So that's where the NSAIDs come in, like the Rimadyls, the Metacams, Carprofens, which is Rimadyl. All of those can be helpful. The Galliprants. That was what Helen was on for a long time until it just wasn't doing it anymore. We moved to Pred. But yeah, you have to keep the pain under control because careful, baby. So that pain is going to make the confusion.
But keep in mind the effects of those medications in an older dog. It's like what I'm going through with my knee now. They want you to use very high doses of non-steroidals. Well, I'm not young. And so, when you're using things like this in older patients, they might be more sensitive to the side effects. And I'm not trying to say don't do them, but you have to think about each of these. And your veterinarian is going to do that and be cautious. And if your dog's not on anything, start one thing at a time.
Yeah, start slow.
And one last thing about sledgeling is that if you're going to use a drug like this, you're going to want to feel pretty confident that this dog has canine cognitive dissonance. You're not going to just say, well, let's just try it. I mean, you might, but you want to be honest about that. Well, this isn't just something you give randomly.
Let's put it down. Because
not that we do anything.
Never. But it is like I have had one client whose dog took it and did not, just was way overexcited, could not handle taking the Solution. It just was not good for him. Okay. So we do have, it's not, well, let me back up and say, I would love to see you try one thing out of those 4 pillars. Okay. One thing. You don't have to do everything. Just try one thing out of each of those and see how that supports your dog. Now, there are other things that you can do. There's been recent science studies on photobiomodulation, also known as laser, being used for brain health. And that has been pretty exciting, but it also means it's like 4 times a week, 3 times a week for a month. It's very intensive, but it is out there. Massage can be great, again, for the calming effect, the pain control, and not just because I'm partial to that. I love swimming for these dogs. I love swimming for Helen because it allows her to get her body moving without hurting the rest of her and her arthritis and her pain. And it can be very calming for a dog who doesn't mind swimming. If you've got a dog who's never been swimming before, then we go slow on that, just like everything else. Acupuncture, I think, is another good one. I'm partial to acupuncture. It's been amazing for her. I've had other dogs that didn't do much for her, but I think for her, it's been great. Yes?
What are your thoughts on CBD for the anxiety and pain?
I'll let you answer that one.
I personally don't have experience with using it in that way. And I've been retired for a few years. We used it for pain and other things. It's like all the other things. And veterinarians take an oath that says a lot of things, but it's basically a do no harm. So that's what we have to think about. And the minute you get that dog, take that oath, right? You do no harm, or do your best to do no harm. So I honestly can't answer that in any direct fashion. I'm sure someone can though. And of course, that's another one of those things where we're like, I don't know.
Was it CBD?
CBD, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My vet, who's a natural vet, has very on CBD,
Mhm.
but very little.
Yeah.
It is
To see, and I have to keep a lot. How's it
Yeah.
doing? Because
And the thing about, you can say blanket CBD, but there are a lot of different variations.
Right.
There are a lot of different dosing. There's different strengths. So I think it's something that you need to do your research on, find a practitioner who works with that, and make sure you're doing it right. I would not recommend going into your local store and saying, hey, I got a dog, what do I do? I would not go there. I
For
would go
anything.
for anything, right? Yeah, so I would definitely go through your veterinarian for that.
Okay, to him, and he researched it with me.
Yep.
And said, okay, you may use this.
And that's great. That's where the partnership comes in. Okay, so the bottom line here is that hope and action are going to make better days for your dog, and they're going to make better days for you. CCD is real. You're not imagining it. Your dog is struggling. You're looking for a multi-pronged approach. One thing is not going to solve your dog's problem. So we talked about this earlier, just picking that one thing from each pillar and just make a small change. And for me, I think the most important thing here is that you're not alone. You've got people that want to walk this journey with you. We happen to be one of them. Your veterinarian should also be one of them. And I'll be quite frank in saying that if they don't want to walk this path with you, you need to find a new veterinarian. They need to be your partner. You need to trust them. They need to listen to you. That's part of what goes into providing that care. And the hard one, I think, is quality over quantity. We may get to the point where Helen's not processing what's happening. And then we make a decision whether her days are good enough for her to stay with us and she wants to stay there. Now, success is a little bit different for every dog. But if your dog feels safer, and that safety could be, I can walk across the kitchen floor to get a drink because I have my boots on. It can be something as easy as that. There's less anxiety, there's better sleep, more good days than bad. I will tell you one thing that I got from a client was she has a jar. When she has a senior dog, she has a jar and she starts with 10 pennies. And every day your dog has a good day, you put the penny in the jar. If your dog doesn't have a good day, you take a penny out and you watch that balance. And it's a visual for you to be able to stay in touch with what's happening in the recent past. Your goal here, success is slowing the decline. It's not stopping it. It's not reversing it. It's slowing it. And you want to make the most of your time together. So use those routine walks as an opportunity to get to spend more time with your dog. Activities, all of those things that are going to help her function and do better. You can have fun doing this with her. Okay. And most importantly, be patient with your dog. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate those small wins and ask for the help when you need it.
I want to add just one quick thing, because you've been very patient with us. And that is that when we talk about diagnostics, the brain is a very protected space for obvious reasons. And there's a very thick skull, and there's something called a blood-brain barrier to try and keep things from getting in the brain that shouldn't be there. So from a diagnostic point of view, and you think about, we talk about blood work and we talk about urinalysis and we talk about some other things, but the standard stuff we do doesn't diagnose it. An X-ray doesn't tell you anything about the brain unless there's something really wrong with the skull. A CT will tell you more about the brain. MRI will tell you the most about the brain. How often do we do that? Not that we shouldn't, but if you were part of the National Institute of Health's lifetime Alzheimer's study, they would have you doing blood work every year. They'd have an MRI. You'd have 2 PET scans, which are basically CTs with certain special tracers to look for amyloid and tau. You'd have a cerebrospinal fluid tap, and you'd give them your brain and you die. And so if you get frustrated that we can't give you a diagnosis, then that's where we use the term a rule-out diagnosis, that we've ruled out the things that we think we can treat or do something different for, which is very frustrating, and it's not inexpensive. So just realize that making a firm diagnosis of this kind of disease is almost impossible. So it's you are going to end up doing some things that are trial and error. And that's fine. You know, you are in charge of all of this, no matter whether you feel like you are or not. And it's not your fault that this is happening. So.
That's great. All right, anybody have any questions? Yes.
So you know Lily, so Lily does a little bit of pacing at night, but not very much. And I'm looking at everything you're presenting today, and I mean, you know, I don't think she has this or anything getting near it. But is there sort of a normal thing with the aging of a dog like us? You know,
Yes.
maybe short of MCI, but just sort of, she gets up, paces a little, but it doesn't go on all night. It could be animals too, because she's afraid, you know, there's wildlife up where I live. So just don't worry about it.
Well, that might be the first step that you're already thinking about to watch for other things.
Yeah, and now I know other things to watch for.
Right. Which I think you would have intuitively known anyway.
I sort of do.
Right.
So, yeah, because I was already thinking, she's pacing at night now.
And that's one of those where you want to listen to that little voice in your head that's saying, hey, something's different, right? You want to pay attention to that just like you're doing. And it's not always just one thing that's going to tell you absolutely that's what it is. You're looking for clusters, you're recording clusters, and you're going to share those with your vet. And the two of you are going to come up with ideas on what's going on. Yeah.
So just like with human dementia, you know, they say the earlier you catch it, the earlier you treat it, the more you start. Same, I assume, with canine, right? So how many, like she kind of led into, how many symptoms that we discussed here are you going to wait to kind of develop before you start thinking that, hey, this might be what this is? You know what I'm saying? Like she said, well, keep wandering a little bit, but not a lot. That wouldn't concern me.
Right.
Right, so how many symptoms and how often is like the trigger point for you to go, maybe this is something more serious than.
Okay, so just to repeat the question really quickly, you're asking about how many symptoms are you looking for before you said, hey, this might be CCD. So I don't think there's a hard and fast answer to that, but what I can say is I like to look for clusters of things. So I like to look for clusters of pain. I like to look, especially with her, I started getting that bell in my head after I saw 2 or 3 things that were just not her. I think there's a little bit of, oh, okay, she's not going to the right side of the door. Okay, well, she is, 13, so maybe that's it.
Time, like,
Yep.
They start happening more frequently.
Yes, and that's the other thing. So when you start to get that little voice in your head more than once or twice, you need to start logging. And by logging, I mean, it can be something as simple as you've got a notes app in your phone and you write down 3 or 4 words a day, or every time you see something, November 12th, she went to the wrong side of the door again.
And would it always be prone to be the same thing, like when you keep referring to the hinge side of the door versus the other side of the door? Or can it just depends?
Yeah, I think it depends, but I think they also start to show, things start repeating themselves. They do start to do things like that. Like we noticed having trouble getting her to come inside.
And it will happen every day, every
Yeah.
time. Consistent.
It's yes. Yeah, it's not like it's on clockwork, but you're like, oh, there it is again.
Right.
There it is again.
It's happening more often than not.
Yeah, we noticed her sundowning pretty quickly, and we noticed it before she started having a problem going outside. So we would notice the change in her affect. We would notice the change in her anxiety level. And it's weird. It is where the sun is in the sky. So it's not,
Different time of year.
Yeah. So it changes. So like now, if she weren't on her meds, it would probably be around 5 o'clock. As it is, she won't go for a walk after the sun hits that spot. She won't go outside.
What happens if you're on a walk with her?
I don't. I very much know that. So yeah, I try to make sure that I can stop out. Yeah, exactly.
Call someone and
Because,
bring a car.
well, she'll stop. I mean, if it's close, she'll be like, "Mm-mm." The other dogs will be out in front. She'll be lagging and kind of looking behind her. And it's like, okay, she's done. We need to turn around. So it's really that combination of stuff. Yes.
I just wanted to expand a little bit, maybe on what you said, and maybe to go, you said that you would be supplying us maybe with a resource that would give us a tool then, that we don't have to say that they have so many significant things, but you could bring that to the vet and go, you know what, I've noticed this on her checkbox, I've noticed this on her checkbox, I've noticed this on her checkbox. Is this significant? And maybe that would help us to communicate with the
You bet.
vet.
You bet. And that is what the DISHA tool is. It's a scale of 1 to 2. So
And
it's
you
0,
said
1,
yours comes
2.
up on a 30, where maybe mine would be different, but my provider that I go to would say, you know what, maybe we ought to look at this a little bit more. So
Yep.
that's the tool that you'll provide us
Yes.
and to help us make, since none of us are experts,
Correct.
that you'll be able to kind of guide us.
Yeah. The cool thing about the tool is that it actually has prompts on it. Your dog does this, never, sometimes, always. You know, it's one of those, or mild, severe, not present. So that's going to be in there. And then you total up the number, and then there's a range that helps you figure out, is it mild? Is there nothing there? Is it mild? Is it severe? And it really helps you and your veterinarian grade.
So that's a great tool for us to use.
Yeah, and it's what's it called when it's been peer reviewed, and what is that, where it's been tested? It's been verified. So it is statistically accurate. Let's put it that way. So it's a very common.
Well, and this brings up the point that most of the questionnaires and the assessments of what you do with your dog is you. It's not me. And most of the studies have been based on what owners are seeing at home and a few little simple tests that you do to see if they can remember stuff. And I can guarantee that if Lily starts pacing all night, you're going to be concerned. And if your dog starts barking all night, you're going to be concerned because it's very disruptive to your own life. So sometimes the severity of the symptom is what gets you thinking, this is bad.
Yes.
Are there any studies being done about CCD like there are Alzheimer's?
Yes.
Yeah, but as I said, with the tests that have to be done, most of the research that might be a little more in-depth is on lab animals. The question is, are owned animals, out living in the environment that you live in? And that's studies have been done, but it's mostly those kind of studies of what are you seeing at home? What do we see when we ask you to do certain things with your dogs? When we get into the actual hard diagnoses, I'm not sure how much has been done, but it's certainly not to the degree that it is in people. Good question. All the questions have been.
Is there somewhere for you to donate passes and equipment that you can donate it to the brain?
I'm trying to think there is a university that will take the brains. I don't know where that is, but I can find out that answer for you. I know that for degenerative myelopathy, I think it's University of Missouri, right?
But somewhere it exists.
Someplace exists. Yes, they
Someplace
are
that this
doing
is
that.
their thing
Yeah.
of research.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Any other questions? Excellent. Okay. Sorry, we ran a little bit over,
Yeah.
but appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming. And we've got a couple more events coming up soon. Our open house will be in January. I hope you can join us for number 11. Pets of Pima Parade. We've got 3 or 4 years running to be in the top fundraiser. So hint, hint, we'd love to have you walk with us. And we are going to have a table and we're going to have a booth at the book festival this year. So we would love it if you'd come and visit us. All right. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.